A little while ago, I did a video on the Wheel of Time, and it was kind of a ranty thing over the Wheel of Time series. I read the first 3-ish books, and I want to break down each one of those books that I read. And before I get going, everyone keeps telling me, oh, you should read, and then it gets really good at this book, and it's like, if I don't care about a character, a scenario, a world in book 1, why the hell am I going to stay there for God knows how many books? The Eye of the World is your fantasy by numbers book. It has very much every cliche of Tolkien-esque fantasy in existence within the first page. And that's a problem for me. I love Tolkien. I'm a massive Lord of the Rings geek. But Tolkien has this ability to draw from fairy tales, from mythology, from pagan mythology, from Christian mythology, from Norse mythology, Celtic mythology, Welsh mythology, and melt it into this big, homunculus thing that is the Lord of the Rings. This just didn't feel that concise. Like, it has all this mythology, but it's so clumsy. Arthurian legend is a big theme of the Wheel of Time books, and it's so clumsily done. This is that weird trope of post-apocalyptic fantasy, like the Shannara Chronicles. So, for anyone who doesn't know, the Shannara Chronicles are written by Terry Brooks, and they are a post-apocalyptic fantasy. They are floopy as hell, and I hated every single one. And that's how this felt to me. It just felt like the Shannara novels. And I think we can all agree that the Shannara Chronicles television show was shit. This just felt like that to me. It just felt like take fantasy elements and reuse them over and over and over. On a technical level, I didn't enjoy the writing style, and I like epic fantasy. I love that kind of big drawing energy fantasy. And this wasn't it. The writing style is clumsy to me. It didn't flow. There was no backbone to it, and it just felt very soft in places. And that's disappointing, to say the least, on the subject, because everyone kept building this up. And Daniel Green, I blame you completely for me wasting my time on these books. It just got to a point where I got, like, I don't care about any of this. And the writing just didn't help that. Everyone is very shallow, and maybe that changes for the latter books, but if you're not going to pull me in book 1, I'm not going to stick around for book 12. The things to do. Okay, so the opening of the book is this very Shire, obviously very Lord of the Rings inspired part. And then that's where it just keeps going. It's Arthurian Lord of the Rings. And like I said, I love Lord of the Rings. But this, oh no. Let's take every fantasy character from a D&D game and put them in a book. That's literally where I was with this. Like, were these just drawn up on those sheets you get to build your characters? Like, why? Like, if you've got I don't know, if you haven't got the guts to create something different with the genre that you are trying to do, why do it? The world building, I will say, is okay, but the world building draws so much from Tolkien that it just feels clumsy in places. There's a lot of information dumping. There's a lot of characters explaining things just out of nowhere. Again, the show don't tell thing where you do kind of have to balance that out. And in fantasy, you do have to balance between the two. And it just didn't balance for me. It was a really unbalanced, really uneven reading experience. I switched between the book and the audiobook, and each just drove me insane. I couldn't deal with either. Whoever narrated the audiobook needs to be fired. Ugh. If a book doesn't draw me in, and I don't get this whole notion, oh, you need to keep reading for the payoff and all of this in book whatever, book a zillion of a zillion. Why? A series should be good from the get-go and pull you in. And I get it that writers evolve. Why is this such a thing? Like, you would think I literally slapped someone's dog with the reaction I got to that video. He can't write. I know he's loved in the fantasy community, but I don't like his work. And it's so clumsy and no flow and information dumping and characters built from archetypes that have been done so many times better before and after. Like, I've read a lot of epic, big, scrawling fantasy, and I love it, but this was not it. And that's the problem I have. Like, if you're gonna do this big, sprawling fantasy thing, do it well and do it right. Sometimes you just have to, and I think you need to pull people in from book 1. You need to pull people in and keep it going. There are better books, and I kind of put this on the fluff pile of overused fantasy tropes like the Shannara Chronicles. It didn't have any backbone, it didn't have any guts, and The Eye of the World just left me feeling really cold. I forced myself into book 2, there'll be another video, by the way, this is part of a series, and it just kind of, I don't know what, I couldn't find anything good about this book. It felt tropey, it felt overused, it felt like a book I have read a million times before. I mean, I would kind of put it next to Prior of the Orange Tree for just generic and bad. It's not a good book. And I get that it's loved, but fantasy literature should be, I don't know, if you're going to do Tolkien, embrace the Tolkien. That's what I say. Don't take it, subvert it, do whatever, but use those tropes and use them well. Don't just take Tolkien and write fan fiction. That's all this felt like to me, was Lord of the Rings fan fiction. And I'm going to talk more in depth about book 2 and 3, the other two that I read, in other videos that are coming up, so do keep an eye out for them. And I know you're all going to hate me for this, but the Eye of the World was just crap. Like, what is the big deal over this book?